This week on Engage the Sage.
Hi everyone, I'm Don Saucier. Welcome to this week's episode of Engage the Sage. This week, I'm going to talk about the value of active learning. As an instructor, I'm always trying to find ways to engage my students in their learning. I want them to understand the content. I want them to think about the nuance. I want them to be critical about it. I want them to be able to apply it. I want them to see the interactions of the content both academically and understanding how it fits in their personal and professional lives. In short, I want them to do more than memorize and regurgitate my content. To help my students learn the content at that level, I use active learning in my classes. If you're watching this channel, you've probably heard about active learning before. This is not a new thing. But what I want to talk to you about today are how we can make this valuable and why we want to invest some effort to bring active learning to our classes. Active learning is going to take a lot of different forms with a lot of different teachers and a lot of different classes. And when it's used well, what it does is it empowers our students to be active collaborators in their learning. What active learning is simply is having your students do something with the content in your classes. So rather than passively sitting there, taking notes, listening to you, writing things on their laptops and their notebooks, what they're doing is they're playing with the content. They're doing something active with the content while they are learning it. In my classes, I like to do things like think, pair, share, as I think everybody does. You have students think about the answer to a question, for instance, then they pair up, share their ideas, and then they share it out to the larger class. I also love 6-word essays where they'll come up with a definition or an example or the essence of a construct in no more than 6 words that they then share out to the class that really boils down to the essence of their understanding. I also love having my students do a create a blank activity in my class where they take the information and they apply it in a creative way. That might be to create a society. It might be to create a syllabus. It might be able to create a new law. It's going to find a way to take that information and apply it in a way that potentially could make meaningful change in their world. One of the coolest things about active learning is it allows our students to play with the information in a personalized way. When your students and when my students make connections with the material at a personal level, it's going to deepen their understanding of the content. For instance, in some of my classes, I have my students create missions. What they'll do is they'll be given an objective. Maybe that objective is to identify inequity in the world. And what they have to do is come up with a method and then apply that method to identifying the inequity and thinking about how to solve the inequity. So I don't tell them exactly what to do. I give them an objective to complete and they design and complete their own mission. Also, something I do at the end of a lot of my classes, and by the end I mean at the end of the semester, is a homework for life task. And that's where they look at all the content that we've been working with all semester, and they give themselves, and maybe even the people in the world around them, homework for how to apply that content for making their lives and their worlds better. By the way, these are super fun and interesting and incredibly fulfilling to read when you see how your students are going to apply your content to make their lives and the world's better places. Active learning also empowers our students to critically think about the content in our classes. You may have heard somewhere that critical thinking is a skill we would like our students to build. Active learning helps them build that skill. So rather than having students just give us definitions or just give us the examples that we gave them, they can give us their own examples. They can do imagine if thought experiments where you can give them a scenario and they get to think about the factors that would influence the outcome and what that outcome could be. And if that outcome is not optimal, how they could make the outcome more optimal. One of the coolest things about active learning is it allows students to see the context in which they're learning. With active learning, you can have students think about the why they're learning it, the where it would be applied, the how it is going to affect their personal and their professional lives. When students are engaged in active learning, the content is not trivia. The content is valuable in that they're going to think about it more deeply, make better sense of it, and understand why they're learning in the first place. When they understand why they're learning, they're going to be more engaged and they're going to learn better. Some of the ways that I like to share context with my students is either to tell them stories, sometimes even interactively, where I'll kind of have these choice moments where I'll say, what would you do in this situation? And then we can talk that through, or have them share their stories with me. Putting it into those larger stories, into those bigger pictures, allows students to see the relationships of what we're teaching to them and why we're teaching it to them in the first place. This is going to deepen their understanding. Active learning will also often allow our students to create innovative products to demonstrate the learning that they've achieved. In some of my classes, my students actually design and complete their own exams. In other classes, they'll come up with their own capstone assignment to best demonstrate the learning they've had over that entire semester that we've had together. What active learning allows them to do is to create, in the best way that they can, in a very asset-focused approach to learning, the best ways for them to demonstrate the unique understanding they have of our content. And by making it interesting and relevant, it is amazing for us to read. And as I think I mentioned earlier, but I'm going to mention again, active learning allows our students to connect the material to their own lives, both the personal lives they have, the professional lives they have, the personal and career goals that they have. Active learning allows our students to make connections. And making those connections is, by definition, going to increase their understanding of that content. One of the things I might do here is I might have my students complete relevance assignments in my classes where they take the constructs, the theories, the ideas, and they show me the relevance for themselves in their personal and professional lives. Now, I want to offer a couple of notes about active learning. First, even though I've given you some examples of activities that I use in my class for active learning, and next time we'll give you tips for how to make active learning tasks for your class, even though I've kind of done that, I think that active learning is not just a technique, it's a perspective. This perspective means you are going to encourage and empower your students in their learning. Active learning is a student-centered approach. The focus is going to be on the students. It's going to be a focus on their learning, their understanding, and their success. This is a good thing. You've probably heard me say before that our teaching philosophy should be grounded in the support for student learning and success, and active learning helps us to do that. When you use active learning in your class, your students become collaborators in that experience. They're not just taking your direction and do what you tell them. They are collaborators who are empowered to expand and enhance their own learning. I love using active learning in my classes, and today I've provided a little bit of explanation of what I think the value of using active learning in our classes is. I think it deepens our students' understanding. I think it helps them learn that information better. I think it helps them engage in the content that we're teaching, and I think it's more fun and fulfilling for us too. In the comments below, I would love to hear how you use active learning in your classes and some of the favorite activities that you've created. And next week, I'm going to give you 10 tips for how to use active learning specifically in your classes. Thank you for watching this episode of Engage the Sage. Please like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, share us on social media, and we'll see you next time on Engage the Sage.